What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to episode 95 of the U.S.S. Enterprise D tutorial. I'm Zero Elite, and I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. If you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. And new subscribers, don't forget to hit notifications on so as get notified when my new videos drop. And of course, be sure to check out my Discord channel. I'll have a link in the description below. But anyway, we're just going to jump right into it because today we got kind of a long one. 31-minute episode. We're going to be shifting gears back into our engineering area, and um, let's just go ahead and jump right into it, and I'll talk about it as we go. So we have our main engineering that was seen in the show built out, but as you can see here, this is really not taking up much of the ship. So I talked about this in some of my other episodes that we're going to be expanding upon this, and making engineering feel more like an engineering that you would see on a large-scale ship. Now, pretty much everything that we're about to get into in this episode and everything that we do with the expanded area on engineering is pretty much outside of canon, just because they never showed these areas on Next Generation. So even when you look at the blueprints, they really don't give you, if anything, to go off of. So it's really coming up to your imagination to fill this in. So this is a good situation to be in because it gives me an opportunity to talk about some of the things I do in this situation. And I did this when I built my the Constitution class. Sometimes when you're stuck and you're not sure what to do, you can pull from other ships. Not necessarily to do exactly what was on that ship, but to use it as a light reference to help guide you in the direction that you need to go into. And so what I decided to do with this was I used basically a loose reference of how engineering was on the Constitution class ships. Because when you think about it, engineering was multiple decks, and it was pretty much focused on the warp core. So that gives us a good starting point to go off of. So we know that, it's probably fair to say that that would be the same case on the Galaxy class ship, that engineering would pretty much surround the warp core. So what we can take out of that is now we can expand our warp core going all the way up to the top point that we can take it on the neck, and we can flesh out this area in the neck that we have just a little bit more. And I slipped up there with my editing. All right, so we're back in, and pretty much what we're going to do to start this off is going to be our walkways. Definitely want to have your walkways in place, because you start building stuff out and you put your walkways in after the fact, it's going to be a lot harder to figure out your walkway situation after the fact. So always very, very important to get your walkways established anytime they are adding a new deck first. So this way you can build your walkways out around, you can build out the rest of your room around your walkways. So you can see right there, I'm trying to plan ahead. I'm looking down to see the outline of that white terracotta down there, so I'm going to have to maybe move my walkways down by one more, or stop them at a certain point and then build around it, which is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop my walkways right before we hit that white terracotta wall that's surrounding the warp core below us. I'm sure somebody's probably going to say you're adding them too fast, and I'm telling you right now, I'm just eyeing it. And if you want to learn to build the way that I do it the same way, just eye it, because what we have right here is not set in stone. We're going to be making adjustments to this, so don't really worry about how many blocks long this is right now. Really, the main goal here is we just want it, and see, it's kind of overlapping this um, wall that we have going around, but we're gonna have to move it back a little bit is what I'm getting at. But we're gonna do it the easy way, and that's we're gonna build up the wall and then we'll make adjustments to the walkway. Now I'm trying to decide right now if I want to go a deck below and turn that into a deck that we can walk in through, but that's going to be kind of tight, so I might end up skipping that. This is again why it's important to start filling or thinking about this stuff now, because it's going to help us to shape out or to kind of get like a good idea of how the layout of our ships or the deck's going to be. Pretty good shape. So we have a loose template now for kind of how this is going to end up looking. And some of this in engineering is going to change too, because like in the main engineering area, these walls are actually like an orange color, so we'll be changing out some of that white terracotta in favor of the orange. And right now I'm just trying to get that template set for that outline, because like I said, we're going to be expanding this going upward. I think for right now, we're just going to bring this up to that next deck up that we built. Can always expand it higher if we want to, but for right now, that's as high as we're going to go. And there's a reason I'm using these gray blocks, because like I said, we're going to be kind of switching up the color of the walls here and using less of that terracotta and using a combination of the gray, terracotta, and orange to kind of make it pop just a little bit more than it currently does. This was something that I talked about in some of the previous episodes, where this is why there was so much of the terracotta beforehand, because I was trying to match the exact color of the walls on Enterprise D on the interior, and this was the closest color that I was happy with, but as I really started to fill it in, I don't know why, it just didn't look all that great to me. So that's why more often than not, you'll see me do it, and then I'll go back and I'll swap out sections of it with a different color to switch it up a little bit, because I don't know, that white terracotta just looks so plain, and I don't know why, it's just not working for me. And we're going to do other things too to sprucing up the walls here. We'll have cutouts for windows and things like that. So like we'll have decks. The current deck that we have, I think we're going to have like a deck below it, or like a viewing area to walk around the actual warp core with windows that you can look through and things like that. And then we're going to add another engineering deck or two. I think we're going to do 2 more engineering decks. That's directly around the warp core, and that's not counting the engineering area for the deflector control room. And then I've also got to figure out the whole lower half of, or the back end of the lower hull. That area still hasn't even been fleshed out where I'm at right now. I'm still trying to figure out what exactly I'm going to do with it. I have my hallway, or have my walkways in place for it for the most part, but there's still quite a bit of it. I'm trying to figure out exactly what I'm going to do. So, while I'm working on this, and as we get into more of these areas of the ship that you see me calling out that I'm not exactly sure what I want to do, don't be afraid. Let me know what your suggestions are in the comment section. I definitely love hearing from everybody. And if there's any areas of the ship that you want to see me add, now's the time really to ask me, because once I do finish the Enterprise D, I'm not planning on coming back to this thing, because I'm really taking the time now to flesh this thing out. And once it's done, and we're going to be moving on to other things on Minecraft here. So this is what I was talking about with the cutouts that we're going to be doing. We had to have our wall in place so we can make cuts here and there, and we're just doing it off the bottom row here that we can, where the neck meets the walls of our warp core shaft. And I said this before, that I'm not, at this point, we're outside the realm of building within canon. We're doing just simply what I think will work. And I'm just loosely referencing how the Constitution class looked with engineering, where we had all these work areas that were multiple decks high, that were basically concentrated going around engineering. That's only areas in engineering you ever saw. And that's one of the things that always kind of stood out to me in those older Star Trek movies and shows, as opposed to the newer movies, because I kind of feel like in the newer movies they tried to show too much of engineering, and I kind of feel like doing that, it made the ships look less advanced, if that's weird, because especially with Star Trek, less is more. That's definitely a thing, and I just always kind of got the impression that they were so advanced that a lot of this technology was just hidden inside the walls, kind of like electricity. Because if you go and I'm totally going nerd mode at this point, but this is my thinking behind it. It's just like within the real world, when a technology is new, the way that it's incorporated in your life, it's not so natural. My perfect example, like when electricity was first invented, or the internet, you had cables going all over the place, like along the walls, tacked to the wall for your electricity. Maybe not anybody from my generation, but our parents and grandparents went through that. But for my generation, it was the internet, where when the internet first came out, you had a modem that you hooked up, and you had all your Ethernet cables all over the place. Now you move into houses, and they have smart homes now, where Ethernet and everything, it's all in the wall, and they have plugs in the wall for all that stuff. So that's basically where I'm getting at, where that's where Star Trek went to with a lot of different technologies, where they just became so advanced that they were able to make miniaturized versions of air filtration units, water filtration units, air humidifiers. You can go down the list of all the technologies that would be required to keep humans alive, and they just became so advanced that they were able to miniaturize it to the point where you could have it just going within the walls of the ship. And that's why that's always my logic behind it, on why we never saw it on the show. But the warp core was pretty much the main heart of it. So that would be the main thing that you'd have to see. So I really like that, and that's why I'm kind of just building it out the same way. But with that being said, we still have a lot of areas on the ship to fill in. So we're probably going to have to revert on that with some areas, um, because we have to be able to fill in the lower hull of the ship. And the only way to do that is to get creative and build out sections of engineering to kind of house some of these areas. But I think the challenge will be within that to try to stay within the spirit, or the spirit, I mean, of the original Star Trek movies and shows, and how they designed their interiors, as opposed to what we see now on TV, like with the Kelvin timeline and Discovery, where you have these massively huge engineering areas, and it's just so over the top that it's just, I don't know, it kind of takes me out of it. And I think that was something that kind of sets the old Star Trek apart from the new Star Trek, was that, you know, you had that practicality to go off of. Where now you see where they do these interiors, it's all CGI, and it just takes you out of it. You don't feel that sense of realness anymore, you know. Even though the CGI doesn't look that bad, it's getting, you know, pretty good, especially on the TV shows. I think the TV shows nowadays, they're really starting to catch up with how it looks in the movies. But I think still it's like less is more. Like, I kind of feel like, I forget, there was a director, I was reading one of their interviews, they were talking about, I forget who it was, but they basically kind of described computer generation as a little kid with a new toy, with a lot of directors today, where basically you have access to it, so you just go rampant on it and just do so much over the top with this computer graphics, to the point that it's almost overkill. And I think that's kind of like one of the reasons why people just kind of like get like a disconnect when they're watching these super over the top CGI fest, because to me, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I'm watching a cartoon sometimes, because it's not real, it's just computer generated. But yeah, I mean, not to go on that super long tangent, but that's kind of like a lot of my thinking on when I'm building these areas on the ship. I think about a lot of this stuff, and I think you should too, because it'll help point you in what direction that you need to go in. It'll help give you ideas on maybe where you need to look at reference material. And I think in this case, where if we have to hit something, if we want to look at other interiors from other ships in Star Trek, I did this for my Constitution class. What I did when I hit roadblocks on that, I actually looked at pictures of aircraft carriers, how they were on the interiors, and I kind of tried to use that as like a guiding point to reference where I needed to go with it. And if you start to think that way, I promise you, like, maybe not with just one build, this will be over a period of time where you'll just automatically start to think about these things, and it'll definitely help you in developing your rooms out. Because I had somebody, I haven't had as many as you'd think, but I had like one or two people recently ask to work with me in builds. And I mean, right now, like, I'm pretty content with building on my own. I think at one point I probably will maybe do a collaboration build, but it would probably have to be with somebody that was at equal or more within their YouTube channel. I'm not really trying to build up people that aren't already established on YouTube. And not only that, again, you know, I'm pretty content with building on my own, because that's the other thing too, where like once I get my mind set on something, I'm kind of anal about that, and I kind of like, at least with my build anywhere, it's like, well, that's the way I want it to look, and it doesn't really boast well with building with others, basically. But I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just kind of how I am with the building, and I'm pretty content building these things by myself, because it gives you something to do, and it's a nice little hobby to have, because it helps to take your mind off all the craziness that's going on in this world right now. And it's very therapeutic when you're just sitting here building, because you really don't have time to think about anything else other than what you're currently working on. And it'll help you relax, it really will. Doesn't feel like we're getting that much done today, but we really are, because we're really laying down the prep work here untying and really fleshing out all these rooms. So we've built out our facade walkways here, and we're just going to put the glass up. I don't know if I'm ever really going to do too much on the insides of them. I think we're going to light them up to make it look like that you could walk through them, but I'm not sure if, excuse me, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it to where you could really walk through them, or really go down there myself to go through them. I think I might just facade them out a little bit. Which, I mean, that's pretty fun to do too, because, you know, that's something I learned playing Planet Coaster. Facading out certain areas of your build. I think right now the main thing is get some lighting in here and try to hide these candles, so this way looking from the inside you really can't see them. I think that's the main goal right here. Alright, that's looking pretty good. That's really all we're trying to accomplish right now, at least with what we're at this moment. Just lighting up those the walkways behind the glass so you can at least see them, and it just doesn't look like a piece of glass sitting there. So now when we go down, you look up, it looks like there's a walkway going around there. And that looks pretty good. And when we're more have developed more of this area and we look upwards, it's going to make this whole area of the ship look so much bigger too. And again, this is just going to help sell the scale of the ship, because that was one of the things that with Next Generation, they didn't have the money to do all this stuff. You know, they had you can find concept art for some of this stuff, some of the over the top rooms that they conceived. They just didn't have the money to build out any of those sets, understandably. I mean, for what Next Generation was, I mean, I hear it from time to time, like people will criticize, like, oh, my main problem with the Next Generation was that the computer generated effects didn't look completed. But for that time, like, these are like people that are like younger, but like people that are like from my generation. I feel so old saying my generation. I can't believe I'm saying that. But people that were my age, that sounds more appropriate. Yeah, I'll go with that. That grew up watching Next Generation, remember, like, at the time, like, that was like, especially for TV, that was like as good as it got, you know. So I mean, it's not like they weren't working with a budget there. I mean, they spent, I think they spent a lot of money on their special effects, but you can see where a lot of that money went into. I mean, even the sets that they had, like, for the most part, they look pretty good. But I mean, we're just gonna kind of work with it here, you know. We'll make it work, and where we have to kind of make stuff up, we'll make it up as we go. I think I'm gonna have to move that walkway over by 1 in order to close in this wall here, unless we do like glass or something up top. You might notice the other thing that I'm doing too, the way that I'm building right now is I'm not constraining myself by the shape of the walls that I have to work with. I'm building exactly what I want to build because I have enough room to do it. Now, if I decide to, I might actually fill in all this floor on this deck here and have it to where, you know, we have windows and stuff in the neck where you can see outside on this deck of engineering. That could definitely end up being a thing. But I try to always, if I had the room to do it, I try to build exactly what I want, and then if I want to incorporate the walls that I have pre-existing into it, then I will. But I do this so this way I can build exactly what I'm going for, rather than being constricted and building to the shape that I have to work with. Sometimes that can be a good thing, sometimes that can be a bad thing. One of the ways that it's a great thing is that, like, for example, with the main corridors that we do on the saucer section, I use that as a template to have an area to work with. But at the same time, I still won't try to build it, work with an area and flesh out everything to the point that I'm hitting on a wall base, or I'm building up to the next wall, basically. I don't try to, just fill in every single gap of the ship just to fill it in. I mean, at the end of the day, once we're done with this thing and we close in the walls and everything, we have some gaps here and there. There are little small pockets of the ship that aren't completely filled in. It's really not a big deal because nobody's going to see it. Alright, so we have that bottom floor closed in. We're going to end up using that later on. That won't be a deck that we're going to be walking through, but we're gonna end up coming back to that basically. Basically what we're going to be building is basically like a pit here in the middle where the corridors are wrapping around it. Everything within this area right here is going to be open, and we'll have like some machines coming upward to kind of like convey that there's maybe like a super large piece of equipment there, that's whether that's life support or the water filtration or water itself, things like that. I mean, we're just going to make something that looks mechanically cool. And also, I'm trying to fill in this area that I had to work with. I figure any opportunity that I have here to build, to flesh out an area, make it big, at least with the Enterprise D, where it feels like it's necessary, I'm going to do it because I want to continue that trend of conveying the scale of the ship. Now, without backpedaling on what I said earlier, that I'm not going to always do that. There's going to be tons of areas in the ship where the rooms are only as big as they need to be. And I'm also, everything that we did on, or everything that we're going to build out of the rooms that were on Next Generation, I'm going to build those out to the scale that they were at. But in this case, with engineering, we can expand upon it. We just have so much of this area to work with here. As same with other sections of the ship, it's just going to take just a little bit of time to really render it all out. Especially when you're working with a ship this size, if I can make one suggestion and one suggestion only, it's take your time, because if you make a mistake on a ship this size, it's going to cost you time. It really is. And that's one of the reasons why I take the time to build this ship out the way that I do, because if I make a drastic error, or if I do something that I don't like, then I either have to go back and try to find the save before I made the change that I made. And that's assuming that I didn't make other changes to the ship. I might actually have to go back and delete it. And that's in a situation that I really don't like being in, because for the sake of consistency. right here we can get rid of these blocks. I think we're still within the neck, so we should be okay. I just want to go down and double check. Yeah, we're fine. We can actually get rid of those blocks, and it's not going to mess up the build at all. But still, when I delete stuff like that, I still like to go a little bit cautiously and take my time with it, because you're not always 100% sure what you're deleting on it if it's on the outside of the ship. Now we've got our pit in place, where we'll be adding some mechanical things in there for this deck of engineering, because this will be another larger area. But we're looking pretty good. Doesn't feel like we got that much done today, but we really did. We got a lot of prep work done for being able to really flesh out the neck of the ship. But again, you know, it's just going to be one of those things where we're just going to have to use our imagination and figure out the best way to fill in this area of the ship, because they just never showed it on the show. But we'll get there. We've got a good starting point, I think. And we're just going to take this one episode at a time and try to really flesh this thing out as much as we can. And of course, you know that I'm always going to show all the steps that I take step by step. We'll get through this just piece by piece. That's pretty much the basis of shipbuilding on Minecraft. Just take your time, and it's just one step at a time. I always say that not one thing by itself is really going to make a huge significant difference on your build, but when you start adding in all these pieces together, that's really the main objective here, is that the whole goal of this is just taking one step at a time, and all these elements that we're adding in, they're all going to add up over a period of time. And once the ship's done, we're going to have something that's really special. So we've got our next deck up that we started, but we're not really going to have that much time today to really get into it. In fact, we're out of time. But I think that's going to wrap us up today. We've gotten a decent amount done in a short period of time. Well, shortish. We had a half-hour episode today, but I do think that's going to wrap us up. I just want to thank everybody again for tuning in today's episode. If you did enjoy this content, please help me out. Hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. And of course, new subscribers, don't forget to hit notifications on so you get notified when those new videos drop. And speaking of new videos, you can always catch my new Minecraft episodes dropping Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And of course, if you do have any questions regarding today's episode, or you're just dropping by to say hey, or have any suggestions on future builds, be sure to let me know in the comments section or Discord. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for us today. I hope everybody has a happy and safe weekend. And of course, what did you make in Minecraft today? Let me know in the comments section and Discord.